It's Keri Russell. She's in a much better mood now. Executive producer, writer, and Emmy-nominated writer, Joel Fields.
Jump!
Also, executive producer, creator, and Emmy-nominated writer, Joe Weisberg. See what we did with all the Emmys there? We had to keep saying that after.
We like that.
After 4 years of an unfair drought, things were broken. We should start there. How did that feel for you guys? I know that the easy answer is, it doesn't matter. It's hard to recognize great work. We love our jobs, but there's got to be something pretty great in it for you guys.
So great. I mean, it's like it's so fun. I think everyone wants to be acknowledged for their work, and in a way, it felt better even coming so late because you feel a little bit more relaxed about the show. You're much more kind of settled in it, and it just felt. Of course, it's fun. We felt like we were invited to the adult party.
Right, and Matthew, yours was the first name read off, and that's what started the Americans run.
We were genuinely at the point where we weren't listening to the nominations anymore, so we were up in Woodstock, so our phones kept buzzing and buzzing and buzzing. We were like, oh no, someone's died or something, and then when you finally said, oh, we've been nominated for Emmys, I was like, oh yeah, who's doing this wind up? And then we verified it, and it was a great surprise.
Well, it's also, these two guys I talk to frequently for my job, and I know you both thought it was not possible at that point. It's very unheard of 4 seasons in to get that recognition, but you did. And maybe even as important as that, because that's just a nice recognition, but the ongoing longevity of a show is what's really important. You guys were already renewed for the 5th and 6th and final season. So let's start with we want to push things forward, and at the end of the night, there's going to be lots of audience questions we can get started with. There's been a lot of history about this, but let's push forward by also looking back. I think it's fascinating that the idea, Joe, that you had came from finding out that there were, I think, 10 or 11 Soviet illegals and spies in this country, and it was 2010 when that happened. Well, that's kind of mind-blowing to think about it, that they were still here.
Yeah, everybody is, is sort of shocked by the idea that the Russians were still running this kind of operation, putting this kind of deep cover, they're called illegals, to work in the United States, because it seemed like during the Cold War, everybody kind of gets that the Soviets and the CIA did that kind of thing, but once the Cold War was over, why would you still go to that much trouble? Why would you put people under this kind of really deep cover with a country you're not really an enemy with? But in fact, the Soviets before and then the Russians afterwards used that kind of cover for intelligence operations all over the world. And when the Cold War ended, the Russians just kept doing it everywhere. They thought it made more sense to have intelligence operatives who nobody could find. And in fact, when you think about it, that does make sense. If you're going to have spies, why not have them, instead of working out of embassies where everybody kind of suspects you've got spies, why not have them under deep cover?
Yeah, but I mean, the interesting part of that is that the Cold War was so long ago in 2010. I mean, that's not a sleeper cell. That's like a coma cell. They were. And so, how did you when you came up with the idea, and then Joel, you joined as well, and when you guys put this together, why the flip back to? I know you had said previously it's the Reagan years, and it's hard to. I mean, Americans look at Reagan as the person who said the Russians were the evil empire, and was that why we had that starting point in the 80s?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I thought a lot about doing it in the 70s, where there was all this great hair and disco music, which I love both of those things a lot.
But it turned out we got the great hair anyway.
Oh, we'll get to the hair. Yeah.
Got the great hair anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, you couldn't beat Ronald Reagan. You couldn't beat a guy who wanted to destroy them. And you see in the show how much we get out of that these guys feel so threatened all the time. They've got the worst enemy you could possibly have in the President of the United States.
Right. Well, these two are notoriously tight-lipped about the future, but we try to prod them a little bit about what's coming next because we finished season 4. And I started with that because theoretically, if the real Russians were here in 2010, our characters could still be a little older, but they could still be around. So is that potentially a scenario where we just, Elizabeth and Philip, grow old gracefully in Washington?
I like that you started it by saying the word tight-lipped and then asked a question as if we would give an answer to it.
It's a comfy confines. You never know. You never know. So I mean, we're thinking about moving forward. Let's start. I want to talk to the actors. How important is it when you have delved into a role for this long to know you have a little bit of security? I mean, Matthew, you have the wine show. You can always go back to that.
I literally always fall back onto the wine show.
But was it important to hear that it was picked up for 2 more seasons?
Yeah, it's a real luxury to know, and I think more so for, I would imagine, for the writers, that you have that time, you have that real estate in order to really draw out. And the beauty of it, even going to 6 seasons, is you've put in so much foundation work that the now in seasons sort of 4 and 5, the payoff's that much greater. So I personally, it's just exciting to know that they have this opportunity to really sort of let it ferment and then have a massive explosion at the end. I'm looking forward to the explosion.
So that's how it's going to end.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, they said either alien or explosion. It'd be one of the other.
Or growing old gracefully. But I mean, is there some, Keri, it's interesting that as a show evolves, and these guys usually get this question, where you have 4 seasons, we've just finished 4 seasons, to develop these characters, and technically everybody knows how, not their personal story, but how it ended, right. But you have this 4 seasons to build up what basically was released this last season. There was a lot of build up. What was it like, I guess, for the actors to know that you were building on all the development of your characters to the point where you could have everything with Paige and the neighbors and everything tightening into that 4th season? Did it feel like it for you guys that it was that evolution that really bore some fruit late in the game?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like last season so many things paid off, and it's enjoyable, but it's also easier in a way to have developed these characters and these storylines over years, so that when those things happen, they just make so much more sense and they're so much more dramatic, and you just fall into a groove with it. You really, it's easier to feel those things when you have all that backstory. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's the advantage of, and this great moment, especially in TV, that we're having, where you get to earn all of those moments over years, and the burn is so much slower and more impactful.
Right. And for you guys, can you echo on that a little bit about being able to draw a series out through 4 seasons and then get 2 more to finish this story?
Well, I think one of the exciting things last season is exactly that. We got to cash in creatively on all of these early investments and things that had built, and we finally got to a place where they were paying off and playing out. And knowing that we had seasons 5 and 6 and being able to know that we were writing towards those put us in the exciting position that as we played out those dramatic crescendos in season 4, where they wanted to play out, we also were giving ourselves a lot of clear space to write the rest of the story. So it's been fun this season because it's felt a bit different as we've launched into season 5.
That's spin for we got nothing for season 5. Nothing.
Well, just for clarity, season 5 is 13 episodes and will be out in 2017, and the 6th and final season is 10 episodes and it'll be out in 2018. And as writers in the writers' room, that's 23 episodes. And can you close the hole there?
I mean, the serious version of it is, as you were saying, we cashed in everything, and we talk about this almost every day that we've been working on season 5. There is a feeling that we're sort of starting over, not really with you guys and the family, but with a lot of the operations you've been running. that those paid off in season 4, so we started building those fresh, and that that is probably the most you're going to get out of us. But it is an exciting feeling.
Yeah, except I will say, apropos of process, Keri, you're right that one of the lessons I think we really learned in that first season is it's just not as dramatically satisfying to create a problem in an episode and solve it later in that episode.
Yeah.
There's something that just feels disposable about that. And so we're leaning into this longer storytelling, and it's really liberating. And that's why I think it feels so fresh for us in season 5. Is there's an element, even though it's the same characters and the same story, but there are new beginnings for them.
Right, and it probably goes without saying, but it probably should be said that you as the creators and the writers, when you're building these characters, you actually don't know if you'll ever get to this beautiful season 4 with all these changes. You don't know if you're going to get there because you don't know if you're going to get through the first season.
Well, you think about Martha, for example, when we all started with Martha. I mean, who would have really known that would have been a 4-season story? I think we had a sense it wasn't a 1-season story, but that it would be a 4-season story, and that would have, become so central to everything. And
I remember, we write a lot on our walks, and we took some walks around Soho towards the end of that first season. But I remember a long walk at the beginning of breaking season 2. And I think someone had called from the network as they were making Allison's deal, wondering whether we needed her for a full season. And we were talking about, wow, they really don't know what we have planned. And we started walking it through in our heads and realized that we had many, many seasons of story there. And it was very exciting. And those are moments where you have to have faith that you're going to be able to tell the story. That's what you have to do. You just have to have faith that you're going to be able to tell the story and write that way. Because you don't want to be kind of defensively clipping those story wings to try to get to things.
Right. You can't hold back and protect it. You have to hope that this flower will get to bloom over seasons. Well, speaking of that, I mean, the interesting thing is you guys, so tell me a little bit about what you used to call the master document, and now you call the final document. Explain that to people.
Well, we take walks and break a lot of story on walks, and we also have a great writing staff. We break story with them, and we tend to move very fast and accumulate a lot of story fast. And what we ended up doing, we're way ahead in our heads with story of what we've written. So we started writing down on these pages and pages and pages of story ideas. We started this probably a couple of seasons ago, and it got to be about 60 pages long and contained enough story almost for the whole rest of the series. And it seemed, whatever, we started calling it the master document. We're a little embarrassed by the name. It seems a little grandiose.
It's out there.
It's out there, so it's sort of called the master document. And then we started organizing it in terms of different categories for the story. And then when we had a season to break, or even episodes to break, we would sort of cut chunks out of it to break individual episodes. And then eventually we cut enough out of it that it was gone.
But before we cut it, when we saw the master document, when we actually used something, we would put it into a different font, and then if we used it in a certain way, it would be essentially this document looked like it was written by the Unabomber.
Right.
I mean, looked like only a mad person had done it.
Yeah. And so then calling it Voldemort.
Yeah. When we started breaking season 5, is when we just culled everything out of it and just created the document for the final 2 seasons.
That became the final document.
Right.
We'll see if the final document is the final document.
That looks like it's written by a much more sane, crazy person.
And it's shorter.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there was a moment when you guys were talking about the 5th, and then a lot of people were saying, and final season, and you were like, well, we might get more. When you got the 2-season pickup, how did that change the game? And you was like, okay, it's not just 13, now it's 23. So how does that change the storytelling as we go into season 5? Because you just can't kill them in season 5.
I don't think we ever thought necessarily it was ending at season 5. To tell you the truth, I think in our heads it was always a little, rubbery and likely to keep going. So our sense of it didn't change that much when we got the 2-season pickup.
So it wasn't more freeing to know you had more episodes to do it. You didn't have to think how do we stretch?
It didn't feel really like more. FX had been extraordinary from the beginning. I remember we got a phone call after maybe after the second episode aired. And we were working so hard and under such stress. And someone in the office came in and said, John Landgraf and David Madden want to talk to the 2 of you. We just thought, oh, man, okay, the president of the network and the president of the studio want to talk to us. What did we do? And they got on the phone, and John Landgraf said, listen, we're picking up next season because we want you to know and we want the audience to know that they should invest in the show, and we're investing in the show. And really, from that moment on, we always had the sense that they were supporting the show. In a weird way, the ratings didn't matter.
Right.
And they wanted us to be able to tell the story in the way we wanted to tell it. So I think it wasn't a surprise when we got that final pickup. And in fact, the way it came is really with FX saying to us, how many seasons do you need/want to tell the rest of this story?
Right.
That's the golden age of television to us. It's
Right.
not about the quality, it's about ratings don't matter.
Right.
That's been very, very good for us.
No, that's true. That's actually very true. We were just talking backstage that we're coming up at the end of 2016. We should have 500 scripted series on television. It's really hard to get noticed, and so ratings don't really matter. The great part about it is, Emmys recognition helps for everybody, but at the end of, and this is why this place is full, at the end of the 6th season, you're going to have this amazing story that's going to be there for forever. Everybody can pull it off a shelf like a great book and go through it. That's a great achievement for everybody here.
It's pretty cool.
Now, I think that people here would probably agree that one of the interesting things about this, what started out as a spy series, is it also turned into this great marriage on television. And for you guys, I'd love to have a little benefit of the hindsight. Now you've gone through 4 seasons and everything has sort of changed. But, when we first met them and we learned their backstory that they were forced together, and then we've seen this evolution and it did become this great marriage scene. How, through the seasons, has it changed for you guys portraying those roles?
Well, that's always sort of been the most interesting part to me about the show, is the complicated relationship. And it, because of the spy element and, mistrust in every aspect of their lives, and then having to sleep with other people, it just is such a great idea that pushes all of the elements of a marriage and a relationship with someone. And I think, in a way, the first seasons were such bigger kind of action stories, and season by season, it's just the stories have become smaller and closer and much more painful and much more like a real marriage fight. The stuff with Martha, which was so big in the Philip-Martha storyline, was so big for my storyline as Elizabeth, because it was so about jealousy and mistrust, and I think those are all such relatable qualities in a relationship. It's such an interesting job for me. I've really relished it.
I agree. That's the mark of a marriage.
Well done.
A successful one.
Yeah. Well, Matthew, when we first meet Philip, there is this interesting, and this goes back to planting seeds that pay off years later or evolve, and you have these different shades of them years later. When we first met Philip, we felt that he really loved America, and he was really wanting to maybe get out of the game a little quicker, whereas you have always been painted, Elizabeth has always been painted as a little more diehard. We'll get to that, because there's some misperceptions that I know Joe feels about when they think of the audience as Elizabeth is cold, less so this season, but you have some strong feelings on that. But you were dancing in your cowboy boots, and you ended up buying Camaro. You really wanted to be in America.
What's not to love? That's why I came here. It's brilliant. No, I think yes, those elements are obviously very present for Philip, but I personally don't think he's this materialistic man that some perceive him to be. I think more so he wanted to see and I've always played this, or it's always been big and true in my heart, is that he wants to secure the sort of safety of his children's future. And I think that's to him, or to me, what is a far more potent playing of why he wants to, extract himself from this life. And I think he realizes there's a time limit. It's not, they can't sustain, especially, which season was it when the other spies died? Is that 2 or 3? 2. And they played them wonderfully. Yes. He realizes that, he has an FBI agent living next door. It's
You're referencing the scene where in the season where the other agents they're killed. And
yes, and they're spies, and I just think it brings a lot home to him, and that's what, to me, I've always wanted to play. It's not that he wants a new pair of cowboy boots, but he wants to see his children grow up safely.
Right, and then which is an extraordinary circumstance, being spies, and that's always played through in your character, where you want to take care of Paige and Henry, but of course they want to recruit Paige, which I believe is going to be a major factor in season 5. That all coming together. Is that true? That's not a spoiler. Come on, she's halfway there.
I think it's safe to say that their relationship with Paige will continue to be an important factor in the show.
We'll get something out of you by the end of the night. I guarantee it. It's interesting that they're bringing her in, and a little bit against your will, I think, because you've seen it. And I say you as a character, not as Matthew. And Keri, Elizabeth was much more strident and trying to put her into her. But the great thing about the writing is, as we learn later, again, looking back, your relationship, or Elizabeth's relationship with her mother, is so strikingly different than Elizabeth and Paige. Tell me how do you see Paige through that lens of being a daughter whose mother was said, yes, go off and serve Mother Russia?
I just think parent-child relationships are so complicated anyway. You know, what you come to the table with and what you then want your kid to do and what offends you about what your kid's doing, you know. There is no boring family relationship. They are so complicated, and you know, it doesn't matter. Teenagers just undo you. It doesn't matter how cool or how strong you are or how smart you are. And this teenager, you know, I love the complicated, especially mother-child relationship in this. And I think I agree, you know, I know people consider Elizabeth as being cold, but I don't think it's so far off. I think she's a parent who has a very specific way she grew up, and sees her kids growing up in a very different way, and there's a lot of that life that offends her. But I think it's more just specific, tiny little things that, you know, I have with weird relationships with my kid that offends me, that when he's not polite or something. You know, it's complicated, and I think it's really real and relatable.
Right, and the structure of the show is that because she's a teenager and she was, you're out a lot for, you know, you're out a lot at night, and so she became suspicious.
You know.
Let's put it that way.
They run a travel agency.
The travel agency.
I mean, we have a lot of traveling.
So the nature of the show is she sees you, and then eventually she wants to know, and she demands to know, and you make, I think, which was great about the show, this parents who have teenagers are like, what? You're going to tell her that you're a spy? And then here we are now. She's been told.
Yeah.
And also she's, you know, not a lot of her things are connecting in her brain because she's a teenager, right? They're not firing off all the synapses.
Totally.
She could do anything. And so we get that scene and we saw.
Yeah. And I think it's so interesting because it's not necessarily, I always kind of try to strip the spy stuff out of it, but it's also about, you know, their whole lives are secret from their kids who they love more than anyone. And in a way, it's also this huge revelation of being seen and for her to know who she is and for Elizabeth to be accepted by her daughter. You know, I think I really enjoy all of that. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily about a spy or, I don't know. What do you think?
You know what I'm going to say.
You agree?
I agree.
Yeah. Well, Matthew, you directed the scene or the whole episode that we saw the scene from, which is great because it's after the telling. This is the repercussions. And so what was it like trying to, because that was the first time basically that the parents had to tell Paige, okay, now you're in it, you wanted to know, now you're going to do damn well what we say you do.
Get into it.
Yeah.
It was a very, very simple scene to direct because Keri was pregnant at the time, so I just said, pretend like you're talking to me. I'm not lying.
And Keri, did he say that I want to see the veins pop out of your face?
Well, you guys had a whole discussion about that. Do you want to discuss that? He told me.
Sure.
That. Go for it. Go for it. I think it is interesting. Just tell what happened.
Well, in the
Go ahead, tell.
In the editing, my editor and who's a woman, and also one of our another producer who's female, she said, "Well, let's CGI out the vein." And you were Joel, were very passionate in saying, "Absolutely not," and I should hand over.
Because
you said
I was
very
initially kind of forgetting that you had a relationship with Keri. I got very passionate because we really, really try to not do CGI on actors' faces and to let them look how they look. And particularly in the case of women, where it's done more often, it seems like maybe not necessarily the best thing to send our daughters and other women images that aren't real. And in this case, also, the performance was extraordinary and deep and rich. And so I was on a bit of a high horse about that. And then from my high horse, I realized, gee, maybe we should talk to Keri. But I don't even remember exactly how that was resolved or how
you all in the room turned to me and said, "Why don't you ask Keri what she wants to do?" And I said, "Why don't you buy me some body armor and I will."
But then the great thing is I think we all dealt with this uncharacteristically by simply never talking about it again. And then Keri came in to do some ADR. Mm-hmm. And as I recall, the report came back. You said, "Oh my God, I love the vein in that scene. It looks really great."
Yeah. Like, why wouldn't you want, you're mad. Why, when you're mad, like, your face gets crazy. Like, why would I want to be like a pretty version of that? Like, I want to be mad, but I want to be
still think
pretty.
you look pretty.
Mad.
But there were some critics who I believe called it the Emmy vein. Just say.
But it is interesting, right? It's interesting. It's like that whole subject is very interesting to me.
It did lead to some interesting and complicated and delicate and uncomfortable, but good conversations.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
And Matthew, what about Holly trying to get her to,
I actually, Joe and Joel know I made her cry in that scene because I was kind of, I was pushing for something and there are certain, anyway, I made her cry. So that I hit her once. No, you kind of, there are those moments where I try and, if I have an opportunity to kind of push an actor in a certain way, and unfortunately I made her cry.
But I want to add to that. First of all, I'll say two things. One, you said you weren't going to get spoilers, and I will say we've never told that story, not like that. So, uh-oh.
Which one? The vein or making Holly cry?
Vein. Oh. And then making Holly cry.
I think it's so interesting. Like, it's like
great.
the making of, television behind the scenes and, like, the editing. And I think in everyone's defense, they were just trying to protect me.
Absolutely.
I think everyone was like, ooh, would Keri like the way that looks? And of course I would.
Anybody knows Keri knows she doesn't need anyone to protect her.
That's true.
But the other thing I would say, apropos of that in Inside Television, those dailies were also really fun to watch because, because dailies are, you get the uncut footage the day after it's filmed, and that scene that you watched in the shots that were on Holly, where Matthew got her to cry, part of the way was through the intensity of Keri's performance. So you'd hear Matthew say action, you'd hear Keri just lay in to Holly, you'd see tears sprout in Holly, then you'd hear cut, and you'd hear Keri immediately say, I'm really sorry, I'm really sorry, I'm really sorry.
Well,
5 times in a row.
Our joke about Holly, which when she started the show, was how old was she? She was such a kid.
Yeah.
And she's so nice, and she's such a good kid, and she's like, does her
must have
homework
been 12 or
perfectly.
13.
She's like such the good kid. And it was like a joke between Matthew and I that she's such a nicey that we would like completely joke that the storyline was going to change, and we'd be like, "Fuck you, Holly! Fuck you!" And like it was like preposterous that we would ever talk to her like that. Cut to, "You're gonna," Yeah. Here we are. Yeah.
Well, also, I mean, since we're on that with kids, I mean, casting children in a series that is hopefully going to go as long as this one does is a little bit of a roll of the dice. You have to get
oh my God,
right?
yeah.
You have to get a good. I mean, they went through like 8 kids on Mad Men, right? And
Did they really?
Well, no one knows who the boy is on Mad Men. It's like 5 characters.
That's hilarious.
So, I mean, how were you a little bit lucky, and certainly in Holly?
Well, I think incredibly. I mean, it's funny, we were had to look at a scene from the pilot the other day for something, first of all, and it was just shocking how young they both were. I mean, 6 years or 5 years, I guess goes really fast anyway, but in the life of kids, it's incredible how long it is. I mean, they were little children. They were little children. And I can say this now because she put it on Instagram, Holly now has a tattoo. I mean, it's just...
Wait, is that real? I thought it was fake.
Oh, really?
I don't know.
I thought
it's really on Instagram.
It's real. So I don't really know. But you know, I remember watching this tape of her auditioning, and you could tell that she had something, and she had worked before. So it didn't feel like as much of a roll of the dice with her. But Kedrick was really a new actor. He really hadn't worked before, and was, I think, going more on sort of instinct. And it did feel with him like you don't know what you're getting so much, and he's turned out so great. And the only problem we're really having with him is that every summer he grows a foot. Right. So suddenly he's like, he looks old now.
Right, right. Well, you also have that, and then as we're talking about moving forward, there's some really interesting developments, not only as you two playing parents of these kids, but what they're actually doing, right? I mean, I don't know how that's going to play out, and I certainly wouldn't ask you to do a spoiler. But I'm sure you, right? I mean, first of all, by the way, just for clarity, things that happened last season are not spoilers. So it's the future, if you would say, yeah. So for you guys, when you're looking at the end of this, there must be, these guys theoretically know how it's going to end, but you two don't. They're not going to tell you, right?
No.
I think the last scene is Stan Beeman going, wait, they were what? Poor Stan.
I know.
You don't think it's him just going, bye, Philip, bye, call, right?
I love that. So that's how you think it's going to end.
I'd like it to end that way.
That's good.
I liked your other idea as well.
Oh, that Paige changes her name to Monica Lewinsky.
Not bad.
Are you guys running this in the writer's room? Do they come in and offer these ideas?
It's not bad.
And then,
it's not bad.
Yeah, then they throw me another banana and tell me to leave.
And Keri, I mean, do you have a pet idea how you think it's? I mean, I have an idea how I think it's going to end. You must have some kind of idea.
I do. I sort of have fascinations about it, but I like what they've done so far, so I'm sticking with them. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I do have, ideas that interest me, but I have no idea where they're
Give me one idea that interests you.
Well, what interests me is the idea that someone turns. Mm-hmm. That.
Notice she looks at you and says, "Someone."
Someone turns.
But what you wouldn't expect is that someone turns.
But I think that's interesting. What? I mean, I think that you see. It's just interesting to me.
Well, you have the situation where you have Paige, who now is technically a spy, right, guys? By the way, we were called the Jays. Do you know that the FX calls you the Jays rather than Joel?
You know who started that? You know who started that?
Did I?
Russell.
Did you start it?
Did I?
Okay, so that's
guys.
Trademark.
Trademark.
The Jays. Trademark. Kerry Russell.
So the Jays, you've sent basically Paige is a spy now.
No, she's not a spy.
No, she's not a spy.
Well,
what's wrong with you? She hasn't done any. What spying has she done?
I'm not trying to.
I think that. Oh, please.
I think that was a move.
The end of season 4, she has a flirtation with Matthew Beeman, right?
Yeah.
So she's a little flirty.
Yeah, but she's like, should I get to know him?
With a kid she had a crush on.
You really think so? That's a little dangerous, right?
So good.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. She's spying maybe for the family a little bit.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. So she's the spy in the House of Love over across the street.
Yeah.
House of Love.
Family.
Good one.
Yeah. Family that works for the KGB.
Right.
Baby steps.
So, right, exactly. And you, but you must have known, obviously that's part of the plot, when you're moving teenagers who are erratic behavior, and like Henry's across the street. You do know that, right? Henry's going to, and that's my theory, Henry's going to blow it. He's hanging out with Stan. You're a terrible dad. He really has to get Stan to love him.
I know.
Yeah, these are the pieces. They could come out in a lot of different ways.
You guys are good.
No, that's.
You guys are good. Not even budging.
Not even budging.
Right. But tell me a little bit, though, about, as we move forward, the freedom to, it's such a luxury to sort of, to go out on your own terms. And how is that as far as storytellers goes?
It's great. I mean, we actually, the pieces you're talking about seriously are things that we move around and think about, and we have for a while had some different ideas on how it might end, and we've already started talking to the network about some of them. And what's great is, you talk about on our own terms, they 100% will let us end the show the way we want, and to already have some ideas about how to do it and be able to run them through together and really not only be able to feel out together which one we think is best, but know that as the show develops over the next year or so, we can flip it, we can turn it, we can come up with another totally different, better idea at the last minute almost. It's a great feeling. It's a real luxury. It's just nice.
That's amazing, because it's really hard to, most times to turn that ship around when you've already done it, so you have flexibility.
Well, we also, it's a curious thing. I think because we write so far in advance, we actually have the opportunity to be more improvisatory. And that may sound bizarre, but I think here we are, we're shooting the first 2 episodes. We've written the first 7 scripts. We've already written the next 2 full stories, and we have everything sketched out through the rest of the season in very good detail. So what that allows us to do is be rewriting all of that simultaneously. So if a better idea comes up for episode 8 that could be set up effectively in episode 2 and on, we can go ahead and do that, and it makes it look like we planned it.
Right. Well, there's always the talk amongst writers that there's a ripple effect. If you bring somebody into or you make a decision, it affects maybe how you thought the series was going to end, and now you've changed it. And
exactly.
You mentioned the Martha character. She wasn't supposed to be around as long. She became a fan favorite. Is that how it changes the storytelling?
I mean, I don't want to sound insensitive to the fans, but I don't think it was about her becoming a fan favorite. For us, it was about her becoming sort of kind of the fabric of how these characters' lives worked, and going from, is this crazy or is this real, and becoming, in fact, the tonality of the whole show becoming, this is real in this universe.
Right.
And then that relationship and how it affected that relationship making sense, and the story lasting. It just lasted. If it hadn't, we would have cut it off.
Right.
But in a sense, the fan favorite thing, it applies in this way, which is we are the fans of the show in the sense that we committed pretty early to saying, let's just do the show that we're most excited about, and to follow the stories that most excite us. And that's been, in a strange way, it's an easy guidepost, because you know what that is. Right.
Well, and I promise I'm not trying to get a spoiler out of you on this, but this is a direct
quote. It so happens that someone from the audience really wants to spoil it.
This is a direct quote from one of you. I think it was you, Joe. It says, we've been stuck on this one idea for like three years. And my question is not to tell us what the idea is, but has that changed somehow as you're ending? You're getting to is it the same ending you thought it was going to be, I guess?
Well, I think it's essentially, it's permutations of the same idea, but that hasn't changed yet.
Yeah, we keep coming up with new permutations for it. But it is a good example of what you were talking about before, because we, in our storytelling, we kill our babies all the time. And I would not be surprised if that's a baby that we just chop in half, all of a sudden.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, for everybody...
Put it that way?
We're at like 90 seconds feet wide, actually.
You can.
It was pretty graphic, yeah. But to put it that way for everybody here, what about, we're now through 4, you guys are obviously doing 5 already and it's being written. What surprised you the most, either about your characters or the show, and how it's changed as it's gone along? What's the surprise?
I think in the initial research of this show, when you read about what they did, it's so bizarre, it's so crazy and outlandish. You think, if you put this on screen, no one will believe it. And then sometimes people ask what's the hardest thing about the show, and it's landing it in a real place, which I think is a marriage of writing and sometimes how we act it. And to me, there are times when I go, oh God, I'm not sure if this is gonna translate. It's kind of crazy. You know, you look at the Martha storyline, you go, that's crazy. But what the bizarre thing was that what it does, that element, the spy element, touching on what Keri said, it magnifies real life situations. Therefore, you know, it's jealousy times 1,000 or whatever. And the fact that the audience have stayed with us, you know, it's an ask, I think, of the audience to say, come with us. This is a flight of fantasy, although it's all based on truth. And the fact that we keep getting picked up is, I kind of go, wow, that's you know, I'm proud of that as a group.
You guys? Anything that surprised you in the run that you didn't expect would pop out, besides the Emmys?
I'll tell you one that pops to mind. We knew in the third season, it's an example of killing one of our babies, I think we knew in the third season that Philip and Elizabeth were going to tell Paige. And we had it taking place in the final episode. We had it taking place exactly halfway through the season. At one point, I think it took place at the beginning of the season. It shifted around a lot. We didn't expect it to happen in the 10th episode. And what we had never broken was that while distracted by an extremely important other mission, they would come home and Paige would confront them. And that it would unfold that way. We always assumed it would be a decision Philip and Elizabeth would make together to tell their daughter. And so that was a happy surprise as we put the third season together.
Right.
Do you have?
I mean, this isn't so much about the storytelling. It's just something that struck me the other day that I'll mention. That, you know, I've worked a little bit in television before this, but not much, and more just writing and not in production. And you know, just the other day, Joel and I went over to visit this sort of satellite stage that we've rented this year about 2 blocks from our office. And we're building this set there for something we're doing that these guys are going to shoot. And I can't say what it is, but because that, you know, I can't. But it's
no, go ahead.
It's basically these guys were taking these giant. It's inside a room about, you know, a 20th the size of this room, really a small room, like this is about 5 little offices. And they had these giant pieces of styrofoam that reached about a third of the way to the ceiling, and they were painting them to look like something totally different that does not look like styrofoam, and they were going to put them together to make this unbelievable scene for this action sequence. And, you know, in Gowanus, Brooklyn. And it was going to look like something outside that they were going to shoot inside in this little space, and it just blew my mind. And it you know, 5 years into it, it continues to blow my mind. The kind of magic you can make.
Right.
I can't get over it. I think it's the coolest thing in the world.
You would believe that you were in the Rose Garden of the White House. It was incredible.
Well, I'm sure this stack has questions about that we'll get to about the marriage. But one of the things I found interesting to talk to you two is that this is a beautiful marriage that's on television of these two characters. It's very difficult. It's very hard that they're put together, and they have these spies, and they've got teenagers, and you put them in these chaotic situations. And then later, these two get together, and it's kind of this meta thing about their being together. How is it for you guys to play these characters, to be together, and do you take it home and talk about it? Because you do some awful, I mean, you folded somebody up in a suitcase there.
Dressed as Peter Sellers.
Yeah, dressed as Peter Sellers, right. And there's also this, I mean, you call it, I think it was called the honey trap. Somebody says the honey trap, and that's basically, there's going to be a sexual involvement there at some point. And then you've killed people together. I mean, what do you come home and talk to each other about as a real couple?
We don't really talk.
We don't.
Very little talk.
Straight to sleep.
Yes.
Run lines and go to bed.
Run lines, go to bed, yeah. That's definitely yours.
What were you going to say?
I don't have a single thought in my head at the moment.
What were you going to say?
No, you know, the reality is it's dual. It's amazing and it's difficult and it's challenging and it's exciting and it's everything. But it can be difficult and it can be great. I mean, every element brings its own strange, wonderful dynamic, and we're just getting away with it
for now.
Well, we're going to go to the audience questions, but before we do that, I want to say this is the stack of the audience questions, and they came out and handed me second, and this says, all Martha questions.
Oh my gosh, wow.
I think Martha struck a nerve, but we'll start right here. Let's see here.
It's interesting.
Keri, your character is so strong, resilient, and determined, not qualities associated with women often enough, sorry. I love it. Do you like Elizabeth? What do you like about her? From Lizzie.
Nice. Yeah, I do love her. I think she's absolutely, and I love all the rough edges and the things that we don't think of as typically, female, nice moms. I do. I like her a lot. I admire her. She has a lot of qualities that I wish I had. A lot more backbone than I feel like I have, and I don't see her as evil or too tough. I see her actually as being really good at what she does. I see her as loving her children fiercely, as being very protective of her relationship, and incredibly true to her culture. If you know many Russians, I think she's very true to that.
Yeah, there was that odd blowback that they thought Elizabeth's character was too cold, and then I know you do want to say something about that, because you've never felt that.
No, I used to get very defensive about her. I don't have to anymore, because it seems like that has sort of gone away in a great way. But, I always thought that the show has to be seen in large part. It's a show where the heroes are KGB officers, so it has to be seen in large part from a Soviet perspective. Yeah. It's not just a Soviet show, it's an American show too, obviously, but it's also from a Soviet perspective. And from that perspective, no offense, she's the one who stays true. Mm-hmm. So that's all these qualities she's talking about. It's determination, and it's staying true under incredibly perilous and difficult circumstances. And the KGB worried about this all the time when they sent illegals over. They worried all the time that the temptations here were too great and would cause people to waffle. So in not waffling, that makes Elizabeth heroic, which I think is good.
Right. Until Matthew said she'll be the one who turns. Right. Oh, this.
Ironically, well, that would be. You know what? He's right. That would be more interesting.
This is a great question. Will there be more male robot next season?
How many hours has it been since we were discussing that?
We were just talking about this yesterday, and that's all we're going to say.
There's going to be a female robot.
Very good. I knew this question was going to come, so I didn't ask it. So for Keri and Matthew, what are your favorite of each other's disguises?
Was it season 1?
What?
When she walked on set. I hadn't seen it. She walked on set one day, and I went, "You look exactly like John Denver." And henceforth, John Denver is my favorite. I'm always like, bring back John Denver. That was a great disguise. There's a few. There's quite a few, actually.
Yeah.
Boys Don't Cry.
Boys Don't Cry is great.
Yeah. They're all coded.
Yeah.
Are they all the androgynous ones you like? Everyone?
Fascinating.
Maybe.
Fascinating. Those are usually the funniest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your partner to Boys Don't Cry was equally scary.
Oh, yeah.
That dude was...
Yeah, sketchy.
Yeah.
There's another... My favorite is the... Sorry, I'm just talking. Yours.
It's okay.
No, I have another one with it. He has like a mustache and long hair. And I pretend he's from Spain.
Oh, yes, I like that guy.
I've given him this backstory like he was a flamenco teacher. And then,
I like that guy, too.
yeah, and
Fernando. We call him Fernando.
His name's Fernando. And he talks like Buzz Lightyear when he went on to Spanish mode.
I'm the one who said that.
And Keri?
That is my favorite guy. And that's why I said that's what you sound like.
Yeah.
The Buzz Lightyear Spanish guy. and he talks in a very low Spanish voice.
Yeah.
And he says like, sí. Yeah.
Until they say action, and then I have to talk normally.
And for your own character, any specific?
Oh, for my own, I do like the boys don't cry. I think that one's awesome.
That was Contra Camp.
Contra Camp.
Jenny?
Jenny. Where I play Clark's sister in grandma glasses.
That is a favorite, yeah.
It went on a little long, and it was a little rough on the self-esteem at a certain point.
One of the hardest days I've had on The Americans was when Clark and Martha got married, and Margot Martindale walked on and just started laughing at us, and then invented this whole thing about our family.
So funny.
And we all had to speak in Southern accents, and which I'm going to offend people now. I'm going to shut up. But we had to like pretend that we were this other family, and we'd arrived at the wedding in a van, and I couldn't for the life of me stop crying with laughter.
Because she was being very inappropriate, saying very
Inappropriate things.
inappropriate things about things I'd done in the van.
Yeah. Margot Martindale's a joy.
Oh my gosh, I love that lady.
She's a treasure. This says, huge fan of the show. 2 questions for Keri and Matthew both. Well, the second one was disguises, so we'll skip that. But what has been the hardest scene you filmed to date, emotionally, physically, your pick, and why?
The telling of Paige was difficult because you kind of, again, for the same reason, you sort of go, you're telling your teenage child that you're a Russian spy. It's hard. We kind of did the Monty Python version of it one time, like, I'm a spy, and you go, we work for the Russians, and you go, wow, this is quite hard to land properly, and it's the landing
hard.
of it that was kind of difficult.
And it was also really painful, sort of, surprisingly. Like, it's a TV show, but it was sort of heartbreaking, and I didn't expect it to be so heartbreaking, kind of breaking this kid's heart. Like, everything this kid knows, and you're saying, it was sad. It was sort of the idea of doing that to a kid, like really ripping the rug out from them, it was harder than I thought. It was, it was many things, but that was hard. And you're right, landing it in the right place.
This is a really interesting question. What is it with Claudia's obsession with squirrel pins on her coats?
Did she choose that?
I don't know.
It was a costume choice in the early, but then now they like stuck to it.
Really?
Also, maybe a weapon.
Spoiler.
Attack you!
I knew we'd get one out. To the J's, J and J. And there's a sad face here. It says, why did you kill off Nina?
Oh.
I didn't know Annette's entire family were in the audience.
She did that to herself.
Yeah. We gave her every chance.
4 chances.
She did that to herself.
That's interesting.
Well, joking aside, there was another story. There was another surprise, actually, for us. We knew really exactly how that story was going to play out, and it played out pretty much through season 4 the way we broke it at the end of season 1, beginning of season 2, with one big exception, which is we expected it to happen much faster after she got to Russia. Mm-hmm. And Michael Aronov gave such an extraordinary performance as Anton, the scientist.
So good.
And it just suddenly became this incredible opportunity. Wow, maybe they could try to run her against Anton, and we can have an interesting relationship there. And that became her transformation, and there was so much great stuff there for us.
So that's like really a writing room decision at the last second, kind of to stretch it out. Oh, interesting. This one person says, does Henry know his parents are spies? And if so, does he even care? Good one.
I don't think it's a spoiler to say he doesn't know.
You don't know.
Whether or not he cares, that's another question.
That'd be a great scene. We do the exact same with Paige. He's like,
I know. Paige told me like 8 years ago.
I know. So true. It's like, what's for dinner?
He was playing his video game. You tell him over his shoulder. He's
Yeah.
playing.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I told Stan.
He doesn't believe me no matter how many times I've told him.
That is
He's
so
telling
good.
Stan, Stan's like, okay.
Exactly.
That's my ending, and you just made it even better. You made it better. Stan doesn't believe him, and Stan ends there at the end.
It is,
Brilliant.
yeah.
They were what?
So good.
This was the stack that said all Martha's questions. I'll go through this real quick because they're very familiar or similar sounding. 1, will we ever see Martha again? From Renee. Will we see Martha again? Big block letters. Is Martha okay? Question mark, question mark, exclamation point, question mark, exclamation point.
I'm so sorry. The answer is going to be the same. Also familiar. Not telling.
Oh, but wait. No, let me call him on this.
All right, go for
Well, I watched the show. I'm a professional critic. You've already said she's fine. Right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well,
I thought we were gonna see her again.
is she?
We
Like,
say
is she
a lot of
okay?
things.
Emotionally is another question, but is she okay? Why anybody who's watched the show for 4 seasons would think that the KGB, whom we obviously think treat their agents with the utmost respect, but look at the lengths they went to get her out of the country. Well, they're going to put a bullet in the back of her head on that plane. It would just mess up a perfectly nice Cessna.
She's probably, you know what, the truth is, she's probably not doing great. It's probably not great over there, you know.
She's probably working on her Russian, though. It's something to focus on.
That's
Language
what you should be
classes.
cutting to her having the Russian lessons in Moscow.
All of season 5 and 6 is just cuts of her just learning Russian.
Learning Russian.
So here's what people really, this is on their brain. So as
You're
Martha
right.
was so well received, why did you choose to terminate her character? We don't know that that's true, right? Is Martha only a 4-season story? Maybe, hopefully not just 4 seasons for her. See other side too. What inspired the inclusion of Est in the storyline? There you go.
That's actually
That's a good-
that's a great TV story. I love that story about the kind of collaborative process. That idea came up because we were looking for something for Stan's wife to sort of kind of bring the character to life and kind of dimensionalize her a little bit. And that idea just came up in the writer's room. Just what if she were sort of into Est? That's something from the period that kind of makes sense. And everybody kind of liked that idea, and we talked that through for a while. And it literally ballooned from there, and you can see where it went. So it came up in a much smaller context and became so central to everything in a way. You know, it was interesting from the very beginning of the show, we always knew Philip's never going to therapy. That's not a thing that's going to happen for a million reasons. But this sort of became a kind of a way for him to think about himself and talk about himself that I don't think we ever would have found it without that. So I just love how that happened.
It also, just from a viewer's perspective, it creates this kind of scary scene where every time Matthew is doing it as Philip and he's in Est, I think he's going to say out loud.
Don't do it. Yeah.
Well, and another thing about it too, we love is, you know, at least I think most of us growing up, or I don't know most of us, but most of us in the writing room, we're sort of brought up with a sort of a negative connotation for Est. So we get to do a sort of another version of the KGB. People keep thinking we're going to take it down, but we're not taking it down. Mm-hmm. We're sort of showing the other side of it.
Mm-hmm. And wow, there's people really love Martha. Just want you to know that.
Oh, okay, we'll bring her back.
She definitely wants to come back. I do like this question though. Did Philip ever love Martha?
No.
Wow. Wow.
Split the audience.
I don't think the audience believes you, but is that how you feel if your character is Philip? He never really loved her?
No. I think he felt enormous guilt. And that's how I played it, is that he realizes, you know, with each step that it's becoming, you know, what he's asking of is becoming so enormous. And that's, you know, to me, that's what it always was, that it was, he felt this enormous guilt. But I never thought, did you write him as, was he in love?
Not in love.
Not in love, but
loved
never
her.
in love with her, but, you know, feelings for her. But, you know, what those feelings were, you know, I think it's very hard to say. I think he had I think it makes sense the way you're describing it. I understand that those feelings can get very deep.
Yeah, and what I tried to do was keep my face as blank as possible, and then whatever music they put on would kind of determine how he felt.
But then we didn't do music.
No.
Then we didn't do music.
So everyone was like,
the
how does he
blank
feel about it?
face
He
was
looks so blank.
You know how I would describe it? I would describe it as he cared about her. He did come to care about her.
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Well, and I'd say that to me, I think there was love in that caring, and that's part of what made it complicated. And that's different than being in love with somebody. But you forge a relationship, and you even tell yourself, well, I'm just feeling guilt. But you spend years going through the motions with somebody and being around that person. You'd have to be pretty dissociative and pretty inhuman not to have feelings, and Philip's a human being. Even if you, Matthew, obviously...
Yes. Old blank-faced Rhys, as he's known.
Well, this is actually kind of a fascinating glimpse sort of into the process because, as you know, when you have actors of this quality, you don't just tell them what to do. They get to have input and do things. And so here's a scene where Matthew very clearly says that Philip doesn't love Martha. And then you two talk about love. And then, interestingly, a lot of people believe that sometimes Keri, your character, Elizabeth, her reactions are that she feels jealousy because she thinks that he loves Martha.
But whether that, I don't think, changes the way Philip feels. You can perceive someone, I could perceive, someone having feelings for someone that they don't at all. It doesn't matter what that person, it's that, that's just my experience, that my character would be worried about him being so careful with her and being so, I think that was what was so great. And to me, it really pushed Elizabeth's sort of sensitivity and love sort of for this partner. I liked seeing that, and I liked seeing her wounded by it. I mean, I think it was painful for that character.
Yeah, I mean, I'll never, that's one of my favorite scenes that we ever did was when you asked him, would he go back with her? And I don't even know if you can, I think what I liked about that scene was it's almost impossible to even put it in terms of, did Elizabeth think that Philip loved Martha and not her? It's kind of lives in a different space than that. It's almost like Elizabeth, without having the words for it, feeling that he might be happier with her than with her.
Yeah, like she does the things that you want me to do that I can't do. And that's such a relatable thing that I feel like we all feel. And I think that's what it is. It's like, I know like she was the softer, nicer person. Is that what you wanted? Like, would you do?
But I could never be that.
Would you choose that if you could have chosen that? And when you asked about what was one of our favorite scenes or hardest, one of my favorite things was one of the scenes that Matthew directed. It was like a big fight in a hallway, and I feel like it was such a marriage fight and bringing up things that were, and interestingly, there was a line in it, and it's just like, it starts off sort of about Est, and she's like, yeah, I went, and it was fine, and then it just like comes out what you really think for like 2 years. You're just like, it's so stupid, it's so stupid, and you go, and you're just like spitting and yelling about these old things, and the other person's just inciting you, and there was this whole issue about, I was supposed to say a line. What was her name? Irina. I was supposed to say, and you fucked Irina, or something like that. And I was like, it doesn't matter what her name is. Like, I don't want to stop the fight to say her name. People know she's mad about it. Like, you just want to say, and you lied about fucking that girl all those years ago. And they kept saying, no, you have to say her name. I was like, it doesn't matter what her name is. The audience knows she's mad about it. And it's such like an old, ugly fight, but I love those moments in the show because it's so marriage-like. They're talking about things, a hurt feeling from 4 years ago, but they know exactly what the other fight, you know what I mean? So I really like that.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah. It's good for you not to say anything. I should note that nobody said they were sad that Gad was killed.
Here's the GAD stack.
There's no GAD
collecting the GAD
No
stack.
one cared about GAD. But I do want to.
We did.
I kind of cared about him, especially how he died. Yeah, it was sad.
That was tough.
That was sad.
And he's a great actor, so that was
Boy, oh boy.
tough loss there.
Yeah.
I just we're going to need to wrap things up, but I do wanted to give the actors a chance to say, how would you, if you could, in a scenario, how would you like your either the couple to end up or your character to end up? Would it be more satisfying for you to be found out and shot, or everybody grows old? And then you guys can.
Then you want us to act out some things.
Yes.
No,
This is good.
Well, they can guess because they don't know yet. I just curious as to how you wished it would end for your characters. We've come to, but after 6 seasons, we're going to really love them. So.
What do you want? Oh, God, I have no idea.
I want the slow-mo. I'll jump in front of Elizabeth. No! and then you hold me, and I'm like, one of those, I never loved Martha. That's what I want. And Stan is the one going, you lied to me, Philip. Just a thought.
That was an actual spit take from Keri, by the way. And Keri, how about?
I have no idea. I sort of love kind of the. I know it's a stolen quote, but like the delicious ambiguity, ambiguity of like the whole thing. Like I have no idea where it's going, and it's sort of great. I'm okay with it.
Maybe we confess to Henry, and after the confession, he goes, "Did you get that?"
No. Well, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. Well, we know the Jays are not going to reveal anything. They steadfastly refuse to do any spoilers. But we should say thanks to everybody for coming out. We got 2 more great seasons of The Americans. So Joe, Joel, Keri, Matthew, thank you for taking time out on this.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Very much. Thank you.
All right.